Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we'll be going over Pleiades Superstar, the new revered guardian from Super Slam. A lot of stuff happened this past week. We saw the reveal of Silver Age, and there will be Silver Age deck lists on this channel. However, I thought it'd be a good idea to finish up the Super Slam heroes before we take a look at any Silver Age. Of course, next week is going to be KO, as he is the last of the Super Slam heroes. And also this week, hopefully, we will have some Chaos Zero Nightmare content going up as the game releases on the 22nd. So, or it has released on the 22nd, since this will go up that's I think what, a Wednesday. So yeah, this video goes up after CZN comes out, but I'm not going to have the content ready to upload until next week or the week after. Hopefully I'll get it up in a few days, but that's enough. Let's start with the deck list. Starting with Pleiades Superstar, the brand new revered guardian hero. She is a 4 intellect, 40 health revered guardian with 2 abilities. An instant ability to tap her and remove a counter from an aura of suspense you control, and then you may put a suspense counter on an aura of suspense you control. So this is here to tick down your leaves the arena auras while keeping up your ones that have effects that go every turn. That'll make more sense when we look at the actual deck list. And then she has, when the crowd cheers you, create a confidence token. Those are useful. You do swing in with some pretty big attacks, but mainly it's for that first ability to keep our auras in play. Equipment-wise, we are playing the Crown of Providence, as it's just generally the best helmet. We are playing Findle Spring Tunic because, well, we're not playing the most Guardian attacks. You could play more surge-based stuff with tech plating instead, but since Tunic can be used to play some of our auras out, I thought Tunic was pretty good. And then Attention Grabbers and Boots to the board from the Armory deck. Attention Grabbers is a 3-block glove if we remove a suspense counter from a aura of suspense we control, which can be pretty good with things like in the palm of your hand. And boots to the boards are just better boots than whatever other Guardian boots you could play. We do have other shoes in our inventory, but for general use, we are going to be going with these 2-block tempered shoes. Sometimes we make the toughness, other times we don't. It's okay. They're just 3-block. And then for the weapon, for at least the main board, we're playing Moment Maker. This is the weapon inside of the Pleiades Armory deck, and the only new weapon from Super Slam. This is a 3 cost to attack for 4 power. It's a 2-handed hammer axe, which means we can pummel it. If you control 3 or more auras of suspense, this gets +2, and on hit of hero, the crowd cheers you. That's a little hard to do, but sometimes you do get it off. We really just needed a weapon. This will be our weapon for any matchup. We don't need a shield. We are playing a 1-handed hammer and shield in our inventory. We'll take a look at that later, but since Moment Maker is the new weapon, I just had it up here in the main board. For our deck, we have a 51 card main board, which means we are adding in 9 cards every game. Let's start with the attacks, because there aren't very many of them. Thankfully, Guardian has a pretty good weapon, and all of the auras of suspense buff our next attack, not our next attack action. That even includes some things like Terra Sunder, which can still buff up our weapon. So, we're just playing some general good attacks. 6 copies of Boulder Drop. The red one is brand new. It comes from the Pleiades Armory deck. So if you bought that, you should have them. We also have the blue Boulder Drops, which I believe were also reprinted. And these are just like general good disruptive attacks. Your opponent has to block them or lose a card, guaranteed. So Boulder Drop, really, really nice. 3 copies of Command and Conquer, just because it's the best disruptive option that we can play. 3 copies of Cries of Encore. This is a 3 for 7 that on attack, if we have less life than the hero we are attacking, the crowd will cheer us. And if we've been cheered this turn, It gets an on-hit of hero to be able to play an Aura of Suspense from our graveyard this turn. That's really good with a lot of our zero-cost auras, but can be pretty good with some of the more costed ones if we have the extra resources. Overall, it's just an extra recursive piece and a pretty good attack for the deck. That's it for the red attacks, but we are playing 3 copies of Macho Grande and 3 copies of Standing Ovation, which is that turn skip if we have 3 or more Auras of Suspense. There aren't too many attacks in this deck. A lot of other Pleiades lists are playing a few more, the General Good Guardian ones, but I wanted to focus on a lot of these zero-cost Auras of Suspense because I think they're very good for just general play over the course of a game. If you can get these up early and keep them in play, you'll be rolling in incremental advantage turn after turn. Although you could play some more attacks if you wanted to over something like The Suspense is Killing Me or To Be Continued, because those aren't really the main ones you care about. It's mainly what happens next. But we'll talk about those in a little bit. So other than the attacks, what else is in the deck? It's a lot of auras and aura synergy cards. We have a good fair amount of auras. We are playing for reds, 3 edge of their seats, 3 in the palm of your hand, and 3 tension in the air. No Active Glory red, because Active Glory red's a little expensive, although we are on the blue. Edge of their seats is just a 1 blue pitch for 5 more damage in 2 turns, which is really nice. In the palm of your hand is obviously really good since it's going to net us 2 cards. And tension in the air is just another 2 cost plus 4 pump that's just easily played out on a lot of turns. For our blue ones, we of course are playing 3 Active Glory since it should be in the list as just a good blue 3 block plus 4. We're playing 3 copies of Superstar. This is a crowd cheers you when it enters or leaves, so we'll have extra confidence tokens, which is really nice, as well as if we are ahead, this can trigger out Cries of Encore. We, of course, are playing only 1 copy of Up on a Pedestal. You could play more than 1, but I think 1 is a perfect amount just because it is recursion. You get 2 recursive elements, and you can sort of loop this with Cries of Encore if you can keep getting the Cries of Encore to hit. Other than that, it is a block 2. I don't think it's better than any of the others, so we're only playing 1 copy. And then the rest of the auras are 3 copies of What Happens Next. I think this is the best one. All of these are 0 cost block 2s, and they all want to stay in play. They all buff the first thing you do each turn. So What Happens Next makes your first card that costs 1 or more cost 1 less. Which means on your turn and your opponent's turn, it can make your auras cheaper, it makes your attacks cheaper, it just kind of does everything. If you keep this in play, you're getting a free resource every turn, including your opponent's turn, which is really good. 3 copies of The Suspense is Killing Me. This is just a first attack, it's +1. It's a little weaker than the others, but +1 on your attacks is pretty nice, especially since the main attacks you're going to be playing outside of your weapon swings are things like Boulder Drop, CNC, Cries of Encore, that just have really powerful hit effects. Or Crush, I guess in Boulder Drop's case, throwing a 3 for 8 Crush Boulder Drop is really, really good since they can't just de-react and block the number. And then To Be Continued at only 2 copies just for some extra prevention. This one is pretty nice defensively. There are a few other cards left in the main board to talk about. 3 Imposing Visage because this gets every aura in the deck. 3 copies of Terra Sunder because this card is very good disruptive. And 3 copies of Turning Point as it's a blue block 5 if you have less life than your opponent. If you are ahead, we can use it with Superstar to cheer us, but mainly it's going to be if you're behind on life, you're going to get a nice 5 block and a confidence token for the crackback. Overall, this is a more defensive list of Pleiades. A lot of other lists are a little more aggro, which I think is a fair take on the deck. Both offer different playstyles. This one, I think, adheres more to the thought of Guardian, where you want to be very defensive and then throw these big debilitating attacks. But people are taking it a little differently, I think that's okay. Moving on to the inventory, we do have a pretty big suite of equipment in the inventory, so let's go over them. First, for Arcane Barrier, we are playing 2 AB, those being Null Rune Boots and Null Rune Gloves, since our boots and gloves purely block. If we go against anything we need Arcane 1 against, mainly being Runeblade, we can choose to play the boots or the gloves. I would go with the gloves right now, since the two decks that are a lot of Arcane, being Florian, or the only two Runeblades in the format are Florian and Vincent, in which I think Boots of the Board are a little better since you don't have to get rid of a suspense counter on an aura you control to get that extra block. You just get the 3 for free. But if you're playing against something like a wizard and you want 2 AB, since we can pay for it, getting rid of both of these blocking equipment is a pretty good idea. With that, we're also playing Balance of Justice, since generally those wizard decks do draw. Also, Balance is really good versus a lot of other decks that like to draw cards. Most Brutes. Another matchup that can be pretty tough for Guardian. Sometimes Syndra draws some cards, so Balance is pretty good. The rest of the equipment are the Titan's Fist and Steelblade Buckler we talked about earlier. You technically could play Rampart of the Ram's Head over Steelblade Buckler because there are a lot of turns we're going to have that one extra resource floating, but I think Buckler overall is just a little more consistent, especially in this deck. And something like Lyeth, we're always going to have the one resource to use for the shield, but we're not going to for this deck. And then finally, for anything that goes incredibly wide, Quick Dodge Flexors turns any blue in our hand into 6 health. So we are playing the Quick Dodge Flexors for an extra shoe if need be. Finally, let's talk about the cards we'll be adding in. Of course, we need 9. Starting with general cards that will come in most games, if I'm being honest. 3 copies of Sink Below, as this deck doesn't have any D-Reacts main board. These are the only D-Reacts in the deck, so you could sub out some of these for more. If you don't think you need Balance of Justice, you can go with that. You can go with the D-React over that, same as Quick Dodge Flexors and like 2 Hungry for Mores. Since you don't always need 3 Hungry for More, you could play D-React just over Hungry for More and play some odd number of D-Reacts. That's perfectly fine. It's really up to you. Sink Below, I think, is the most consistent. If I would play a second one, it would be Shelter from the Storm to help deal with Syndra. Although we do have 2 other cards that are pretty nice into Syndra in the deck already. Those being Spinal Crush and Crush the Weak. We will talk about them later. 3 copies of Pummel is the other card that'll come in most of the time. We can pummel our weapons since they're both hammers, and pretty much pummel on any of our main hit effects is just so debilitating. Pummeling a Boulder Drop makes our opponent get rid of 2 cards, pummeling CNC makes them get rid of a card in their arsenal, and pummeling Cries of Encore lets us guarantee we return our attack back, because if we're pummeling, we're probably hitting. Really, really powerful, one of the best cards in Guardian, one of the best cards in the game. Then, we already talked about them. Spinal Crushes here for any deck just goes incredibly wide. If we can land a big Spinal Crush, it's really powerful. Even off just 1 pump aura, either it be Edge, Tension, or Act, a Spinal Crush for at least 13 is going to demand a lot if our opponent wants to keep go again. And if our opponent's doing that, they're not going to have the cards to use their go again anyway. So anything that goes incredibly wide, Spinal Crush is pretty nice against. And then 3 copies of Crush the Weak. This will come in mainly versus our Syndra matchup because they have a lot of attack actions that have 3 or less base power, but you could play this versus some other matchups too if they do, have a lot of that really small attacks. Mainly it's going to be other ninjas, but there maybe you play against something like Assassin. Assassin's also very powerful with a lot of 3-costed attacks. Or 3 power attacks, since all the stealth attacks have 3 base power, although it's going to be a little harder to land the crush against those since they generally have more 3 blocks, but I would bring this in versus Assassin as well. And then the last 2 cards in the inventory, 3 copies of Blow for a Blow. This is mainly going to be coming in versus our Gravy Bones matchup. Now, a lot of Pleiades aren't teching many cards for Gravy Bones, and there's a good reason for that. Even though it's a tough matchup, playing something first to deal with an ally does use up all of your pumps. But something like Blow for a Blow, what's really nice about it is you can send Blow for a Blow at the opposing hero with all of your pumps. It will most likely have the go again. They take the damage, you send the 1 point, or they block with their whole hand, whatever. You send the 1 damage of something you want to get rid of, and then you can just swing your weapon in after at another ally. You could, if you don't have a pump, just do the normal thing, Blow for a Blow an ally, maybe ping them, pings another ally, and then swing your hammer in at another guy. So Blow for a Blow just generally is a very powerful tool to help deal with Gravy Bones. I think it's the best one here. Outed was in the deck a little bit before, but Outed doesn't have that 1 extra point that might matter in several fields. Doesn't have the 1 targeted damage, nor has 4 power, it's only 3. So Blow for a Blow, I think, is the better option. And then finally, we have 3 copies of Hungry for More. This is a 1-cost instant aura that when it leaves, you gain 3 life. Just gonna come in versus any deck. You need to stick around a little longer with that life gain. It's more Auras of Suspense for our Moment Maker, and I guess Standing Ovation. I've never seen anyone actually get the effect of this card, let alone play it. I've just seen people block with it, but why not play it? If you do get it off, it's just so powerful. But you could, as I said before, go down Hungry for More. Generally, you don't need 3 copies. You could just get away with 1 or 2. If you're going to do that, I'd recommend playing more D-Reacts. Go down, say, 2 Hungry for Mores, and then either the Flexors or the Balance to go up 3 copies of Shelter from the Storm. But other than that, the rest of the inventory I do really like. You could also go down a Spinal. I've seen a lot of Pleiades only play 2 Spinal Crush. I think that's also fair. It is a little costly. So either one you want to go with, you can easily do. But I do like this version of the deck. With all of that, I hope this one was a little faster than the other ones. There isn't too much to talk about with Pleiades since she doesn't really have too many really high tournament results, nor is she that played. I feel like I don't see Pleiades very much, even though she got an Armory deck. I've seen a lot more of KO. Actually, KO's really the only one that I have seen. We did save him for last since he is a little harder to test out. I'm still working on a few cards to see if I like them in the list or not. But next week we will take a look at RKO, the arguably best hero outside of Super Slam, as he's actually putting up fairly decent results. But with all of that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.